I know Dad's busy, but when will he ever be with me on my birthday? Last year on her birthday, my daughter, Mary, said this with a sorrowful look. Her father, Mark, always claims work obligations and is never home for her birthdays. This year, I convinced him to celebrate with her, and he had agreed. What time will he be back? He said he'd be home by evening. I picked up my phone and called Mark, but no matter how many times it rang, he didn't answer. What did Dad say? Maybe he's driving and can't pick up. Don't worry, he'll be here soon. I said this, silently praying over and over. By the time the clock in the living room struck 1 a.m., the front door quietly opened. Mark had finally come home. The food on the table had gone cold, and the cake had dried out. You're so late. Mary was up waiting for you until just a while ago. Unable to contain my emotions, I raised my voice. But Mark, unfazed, removed his jacket and muttered in a low tone, "Haven't you realized yet?" A cold glance shot my way. His icy demeanor seemed to admonish my outburst. I was stunned. Why he refuses to celebrate his daughter's birthday? He hinted at a fragment of the secret. Mark said nothing more and headed straight to the bedroom, closing the door behind him. I had to know the reason. What is Mark hiding? Resolving to uncover the truth, I stepped into his study. It was my first time there in years. The study was Mark's sanctuary, a place I avoided unless absolutely necessary. Scattered notebooks and papers covered the desk. Among them, a worn-out journal caught my eye. This is a diary. Its leather cover gleamed dully, scarred with use. Drawn to it, I slowly began turning the pages. Yulia. Under this name, I have stood in countless concert halls and received endless applause. Touching the piano keys conjures vivid musical landscapes engraved in my memory since childhood. Audiences are moved by my music, showering me with admiration. Among them was Mark, who later became my husband. Mark, a former musician and now a music school professor. Our story began when he spoke to me in detail about the pieces I performed after one of my concerts. Perhaps it was his deep passion for music that led him to do so. His words, though seemingly calm and intellectual, carried an inexplicable warmth. Maybe that's what drew me to him. Over time, as we deepened our mutual understanding as musicians, we dated for several years before getting married. Our married life was smooth sailing. I thought my life, fulfilled by music, was complete, but the addition of family brought a new dimension to it, a significant change in my journey, and the most important event for us was the birth of our daughter, Mary. Mary showed extraordinary talent. From a young age, she could sit at the piano and effortlessly string notes together. When she first performed on stage at the age of 5, the applause from the audience brought tears to my eyes. It was joy as a parent and pride as a musician. Mark also recognized Mary's talent, showering her with both expectations and love. Every time she practiced, he sat next to the piano, intently watching Mary's small hands move and offering precise guidance. "Mary, make this phrase a bit softer. Music is not just about technique. It's about conveying emotions." Mary nodded earnestly at his words and practiced repeatedly. When Mark praised her, Mary's eyes sparkled. I think that was the greatest reward for her. But I couldn't help noticing how much she worked hard to earn his affection. If her drive to excel in music stemmed from seeking Mark's approval, was that something to celebrate? Or was it a burden? There was one particular reason that made me start having such concerns. Mark never celebrated Mary's birthday. It seemed too deliberate to be a coincidence. At first, I thought it was simply because of his work commitments. But this wasn't just a one-off or twice occurrence. Every year, on Mary's birthday, Mark would schedule business trips or lectures, always being away from home. By the time Mary entered elementary school, the pattern had become evident, and I found myself questioning him about it multiple times. Another trip this year. I mentioned it last year, but you do realize it's Mary's birthday, don't you? Why do you always have plans on this day? Mark averted his gaze for a brief moment, his expression stiffening slightly, before replying, I'm sorry, my work schedule isn't something I can completely control. Just bad luck, I guess. Mark shrugged and laughed as if joking, but there was a certain detachment to him. A strange discomfort lingered in my heart. Yet, I couldn't press him further. Pushing too hard would corner him, especially when he was genuinely busy with work. Perhaps, deep down, I also feared that pursuing the issue might disrupt the fragile balance of our family's peace. And I was more than worried of Mark's reasons for ignoring Mary's birthday. I was troubled by how his indifference might appear to Mary. Was she trying to fill that void by devoting herself to practice, hoping to win Mark's recognition? She was a child who never spared effort. Her small hands pressed the keys so diligently that they developed the distinct hardness unique to piano players. By the time she entered middle school, Mary had become a regular champion at national junior competitions, gaining recognition in the music world. Every time I heard her perform, I was amazed by her talent, but I also felt a slight fear. All of her energy was directed toward music, and beyond that music was Mark. Her determination to succeed, for Mark's sake, seemed admirable, yet somewhat painful to watch. Mary's birthdays were always marked with a small celebration by me, complete with a cake. Her 14th birthday was no different. Mark was absent again, but Mary didn't seem particularly upset. Blowing out the candles on the cake I prepared with a big smile. That night, Mary said something suddenly. I know Dad's busy, but when will he ever be with me on my birthday? My heart felt as though it was being squeezed. Mary hadn't become indifferent or accustomed to Mark's absence. Yet, she never blamed him. She quietly yearned for his love. I didn't know what to say, so I could only pull her shoulder closer to me. Afterwards, I went back to my room, sat in front of the piano, and touched the keys unconsciously. A short melody filled the room, carrying away the frustration tangled in my heart. Mary's talent was extraordinary, but the shadow behind that brilliance kept clouding my mind. The reason Mark avoided birthdays. That secret felt like a seed of unease growing within our family, and I let out a deep sigh. Someday, this small crack might grow into a large fissure. Note, sooner or later, we would have to face it. With that foreboding in my mind, I immersed myself in music, trying to comfort my unease. A year later, watching the night fall through the living room window, I couldn't suppress the unease spreading in my chest. Mark had promised to come home for Mary's birthday this year, now only a few days away. Are you really coming home this year? Mark had left on a business trip yesterday, but he said he would return in time for the birthday. Don't worry, this time I'll be there for sure. Mark's voice over the phone sounded too calm, which only heightened my anxiety. He had never been home for Mary's birthday before. Each year, he gave excuses about business trips or overlapping plans, always being away on that particular day. Although I had wondered about it, I never pressed the matter and kept swallowing my words. From the back of the living room, I heard quiet footsteps approaching. Mary must have finished her piano practice. Was that Dad just now? Yes, it was. He says he'll be home for your birthday this year. Really? Yay. Mary beamed with joy. She was already in her final year of middle school. I thought she'd grown so mature, but her innocent smile reminded me she was still a child. She always worked so hard to earn Mark's recognition, so at least on her birthday, she should feel free to be spoiled. Smiling, I placed my hand on Mary's shoulder. Since all three of us will be together, I thought we could have a special party this year. Special? What do you mean? I shared my idea with Mary. How about performing music? If you have any requests, I'll play something too. Do you have a piece you'd like to play for Mark, or show him? That's a great idea. Then I think I'll play Dad's song, Promise. Promise. It was the piece Mark had first taught Mary when she started learning piano. It symbolized a bond between them. Born through music, it was the perfect choice for a family birthday party. Do you think Dad will be happy? He said he still loves that piece, right? Of course. Mark is prouder of you than anyone else. Mary nodded repeatedly and turned back toward the piano. Then I'd better practice more. On the birthday, Mary, dressed in a light blue dress, sat at the piano. She was dressed up just like for a piano competition, with her makeup and hairstyle perfectly done. Mom, how do I look? Does it suit me? You look absolutely beautiful, like a princess. Come on, don't treat me like a kid. Even so, Mary spun around and gave a playful bow. In the evening, a small cake was placed on the table, along with a bouquet and presents arranged in the living room for the occasion. Mary played the piano or relaxed on the sofa, constantly glancing toward the entrance. What time will Dad be back? He said he'd be here by evening, but when the clock passed 7 p.m., I quietly glanced at Mary's face. Her cheerful smile was beginning to fade. I'm hungry. When will he be here? He's probably stuck in traffic, right? Yay, let me give him a call. I picked up my mobile phone and dialed Mark, but no matter how many times I tried, the call wouldn't go through. What did Dad say? Maybe he's driving, so I couldn't reach him. Don't worry, he'll be here soon. I said this while silently praying in my heart. By the time 11 p.m. rolled around, Mary had fallen asleep on the sofa, clutching her sheet music on her lap. I leaned down to look at her face and touched her hand. Her cold fingertips seemed to tell the story of how much she had longed for today. The ticking of the clock highlighted the silence of a home missing one member. The food on the table had gone cold, and the cake had dried out. The sheet music resting on Mary's chest had promise written in bold letters on its cover. Noticing the edge of the paper slightly damp from her tears, I felt my own welling up. Mark, why? The deeper the night grew, the more the silence of the room seeped into my skin. Mary continued to drift in and out of sleep. Seeing this, I finally said, "Why don't you head to bed? Perhaps too tired to wait." She nodded and carried her sheet music back to her room. Her small figure looked even smaller as she walked away. When the living room clock struck 1 a.m., the front door quietly opened. Mark had finally come home. "You're so late. Mary was up waiting for you until just a while ago." Unable to hold back my emotions, I raised my voice. The image of Mary waiting, only to fall asleep, filled my mind, and my chest tightened. But Mark, showing no sign of remorse, muttered in a low voice as he removed his jacket, "You still don't get it, do you?" A cold glance flicked toward me. His frosty demeanor seemed to rebuke my raised voice. I was stunned. Mark had hinted at a secret. "What are you talking about, Mark? Every year, you avoid Mary's birthday. What are you hiding?" Mark didn't answer and walked straight to the bedroom, closing the door behind him. His curt and suggestive behavior stirred both anger and confusion within me. In the end, I couldn't say anything. The next morning, Mark left the house early, wearing his usual indifferent expression. It was as if nothing had happened the night before. I stared blankly at the coffee cup Mark had left on the table, then suddenly stood up with determination. I need to know the truth, whatever Mark was hiding. If I didn't uncover it, I felt this family's harmony might never be restored. Driven by that thought, I made up my mind and stepped into Mark's study. As I opened the door, dim light softly illuminated the stacks of books and sheet music. It had been years since I last entered. The study was Mark's sanctuary, a place I avoided unless absolutely necessary. Scattered sheets of music and a notebook filled with incomplete melodies lay on the desk. Among them, one worn-out book caught my attention. This is a diary. The leather cover had a dull sheen, marked with scars from use. Drawn to it, I slowly began to flip through the pages. June 20th, 2000. The moment I saw the date, my heart felt like it stopped for an instant. It was the same day as Mary's birthday. Today, Rosalie's daughter passed away. The handwritten words leapt off the page. I hastily continued reading. I was the one who imposed excessively harsh training on her. In pursuit of perfection, hoping to unlock her talent, I pushed her too far. Because of that, she was utterly exhausted and lost her life the day before the competition. It's my fault. All of it is my fault. I collapsed onto the floor. A vague understanding of why Mark never celebrated Mary's birthday began to form in my mind. I opened the desk drawer and found an old sheet of music inside. The title read, Promise. It was a piece Mary had been practicing for Mark. I picked up the sheet and examined its details closely. On the edge of the page was a small note that read, For Kara. It was a piece Mark had composed for the girl who had passed away back then. I turned my eyes back to the diary. The words written there made my eyes widen. Every year, on June 20, I visit Kara's grave to pray. Rosalie never blames me. That only makes it harder. Rosalie. Her daughter was Mark's student. Rosalie was a well-known music producer, and I had met her a few times myself. When Mark was still a performer, he had worked with her several times and had introduced me to her. It was hard to believe that behind her gentle and beautiful smile lay such a tragic story. Rosalie's daughter passed away, and her death anniversary is on Mary's birthday. The weight of this truth bore down on me, and I crumpled to my knees. Mark's words, "Don't you realize?" finally made sense to me. However, I pulled myself together and stood up. What came to mind was what had happened the other day. The birthday party that had been planned for Mary. In the end, Mark never came home. The image of him right before he fell asleep on the sofa played in my mind over and over. Even if the death anniversary was a reason, it didn't justify hurting his own daughter, Mary, without any explanation. I reaffirmed my resolve to uncover the secrets Mark was keeping. Reaching for the desk again, I noticed a newspaper clipping beneath the diary. Picking it up, I was greeted by a sight that left me speechless. This is. The words barely escaped my lips. The clipping featured a major article about an accident from 25 years ago. Reading through the details, I felt a tightening in my chest. The article described, in vivid detail, the tragedy involving a prodigious pianist who had been poised for greatness but suffered an accident the day before a competition. After finishing her lesson, the girl whose instructor was likely Mark was so fatigued that she stumbled and fell onto the road with her bicycle. A heart-wrenching accident. Imagining something like this happening to Mary sent a sharp pain through me. Moving my eyes further, I noticed a photograph displayed beside it. It was a younger Mark, a woman who appeared to be Rosalie, and a girl standing together in the frame. Seeing Mark's smile stirred an inexplicable emotion in my chest. The warm gaze he never directed at Mary was unmistakably meant for the girl in the photo. Then the undeniable truth confronted me again. Just as Mark's diary had stated, the date of the accident was the same as Mary's birthday. My heart grew restless, and as I searched further in the study, I found a videotape. The label read competition. Despite my hesitation, I decided to play it. The footage revealed a young girl approaching the piano. Each note she played carried a familiarity, something reminiscent of Mary's performance. No, it wasn't just reminiscent. It was identical. It was as if the deceased girl's spirit had taken over Mary's playing style. What is this? Unspoken questions caught in my throat. In my mind, I heard the sound of something shattering. Had Mark, the Mark I thought I knew, ever truly faced our family? Just then, I heard the front door open. "I'm home." Mary's cheerful voice echoed through the house. Panicking, I stopped the video and quickly tidied up the desk. I couldn't let Mary discover any of this. "Welcome back, Mary. You're home early today." I rushed to the living room, trying to sound as bright as possible, though my heart still raced. "Oh, Mom, you're here. It was so quiet. I thought you'd left the door unlocked and gone shopping." "I'd never do that. I was just in the bathroom." Mary didn't probe any further and retreated to her room. What followed was a blur. As usual, I greeted Mark when he returned from work and prepared dinner. Before I knew it, it was late at night, and I woke up on the living room sofa. Beside me, Mary was softly breathing in her sleep, her schoolwork still spread out on the table. Watching her peaceful face, an indescribable emotion welled up inside me. The secret I had learned earlier that day. Mark's student had died in an accident. The anniversary of her death coincided with Mary's birthday, which Mark prioritized each year. Put simply, that was all it was. I could tell Mark I knew, and I could suggest he share a partial truth with Mary. She would understand. But would that really resolve anything? The smile Mark had given the girl in the photo. The performance style of the girl, so similar to Mary's. I couldn't ignore these lingering doubts any longer. I had avoided confronting Mark's secret for so long. I had feared upsetting the balance of our family. But because of that, I didn't want Mary to be hurt any further. I couldn't keep pretending. I had to face Mark and Mary head-on. Gently stroking Mary's hair, I made a silent vow in my heart. And now, I was staring at Mark's sleeping profile in our bedroom. A calmness I had never felt before enveloped me. Quietly, I picked up Mark's phone and began to navigate its screen. This felt like an act of profound betrayal. The thought that I would ever do something like this would have been unimaginable just a short time ago. However, after watching that video and reading the diary, I couldn't resist finding out what Mark was hiding. Mark's smartphone wasn't locked. Perhaps he never thought I would do something like this. When I opened the messaging app, the name Rosalie immediately caught my eye. If I went any further, there would be no turning back. That feeling made me almost put the phone down. But with trembling fingers, I tapped on her name. Messages appeared before my eyes. "How's Mary progressing? Do you think she can move on to the next stage?" "No problem. She's doing great. If Kara were still alive, she might have gone even further, but Mary's exceeding expectations. I'm so glad. Our dream will surely come true again." Those words made an indescribable sense of dread rise within me. Mary's progress. If Kara were still alive, our dream. These phrases burned into my mind, connecting to the worst possible conclusion. Mark and Rosalie were seeing Mary's performance as a reflection of that girl, raising her the same way, as if she wasn't our daughter but their possession. Scrolling further, a shocking truth came to light. The relationship was far deeper than I had ever imagined. Watching Mary play like Kara makes me feel like we can rebuild our family again. You, me, and Mary, let's start over. My hand holding the phone froze, and my vision blurred. The only sound I could hear was the pounding of blood in my ears. This wasn't just about prioritizing an anniversary. Mark was deeply involved with Rosalie and trying to create a family of 3, replacing our daughter with the deceased girl. The unbearable truth made me almost sob, but I desperately stifled my voice so as not to wake Mark, sleeping beside me. Returning the phone to its place, I hurried to the living room. In the quiet room, alone with this horrifying reality, I bit my lip. The next morning, I visited a private investigator. It was a place a friend had once recommended when dealing with family issues. I immediately asked them to look into Rosalie's background. They mentioned it should be relatively easy since she was well known in the industry as a producer, openly working under her name. In fact, I received a call within just a few days. When I returned to the investigator's office to receive the report, I was rendered speechless by the most shocking revelation. Rosalie had a daughter 25 years ago with a man. That daughter was Kara, the girl who had died in the accident, and the father of that girl was Mark. Mark and Rosalie were having an affair back then. This relationship has continued to this day, as confirmed in our investigation. No way. Rosalie had once mentioned having been married, but that wasn't true. She had subtly hinted at her affair with Mark during that time. Moreover, it was found that Rosalie had influenced Mary's past competitions. She manipulated results as a judge, ensuring Mary would win. With truth after truth coming to light, my mind went completely blank. After the girl passed away, Rosalie became mentally unstable and had been undergoing regular treatment. Then, believing Mary to be the girl's reincarnation, Rosalie, with Mark's agreement, began to plan for Mary to take the girl's place. Mary's victory in the competition had been orchestrated. Her sincere efforts had been exploited, turning her into a substitute for the deceased girl. Everything was a betrayal to Mary. I recalled how Mary practiced diligently, hoping to gain Mark's approval. Anger consumed me, making my mind go blank. Perhaps that's why the despair of being betrayed and cheated on by Mark felt like a distant issue hidden behind a curtain. I didn't care about myself. Mary's well-being was my top priority. With that thought, I made up my mind. There was no time to cry over despair. Mark and Rosalie would undoubtedly try to take Mary away from me. Before those two made their move, I needed to take action. A few days later, I told Mark, after he had finished dinner, that I needed to talk. Although we maintained a semblance of our usual routine, an awkward tension had lingered between us since Mary's birthday. Mary had already gone back to her room. "How come you're so formal all of a sudden?" Facing him as he sat on the couch, I spoke with a tense expression. "About Mary's birthday the other day. Again with that. It's over already." Mark scowled openly, but that reaction was expected. I pressed on. "No, it's not that. I don't care about it anymore." "What do you mean you don't care?" Finally, I voiced the words I had repeated to myself countless times. "I've always felt suffocated living in this house." That feeling turned into certainty on that day. Mark stared at me in astonishment. "I'm leaving this house." "What are you saying?" "Leaving the house. What about Mary?" "She's your daughter." I nodded, then shook my head. "I'm giving up my daughter." Mark was speechless. Ignoring his reaction, I brought the luggage I had already packed from the corner of the living room. Yet, even as I prepared to leave, Mark didn't say anything to stop me. The only thing he finally said was, "Don't say that. How do you think Mary will feel?" It was a non-committal line. "Isn't it fine? You're here. Mary is attached to you, isn't she?" Even to my cold words, Mark showed a somewhat relieved expression. "Well, that may be true. That's right. You'll take care of Mary's lessons in my place, won't you?" "Of course. I'll take full responsibility for her talent." Mark spoke with confidence. It was as if he wanted to appear as a supportive husband, encouraging me to leave with peace of mind. But is there really a husband who wouldn't even try to stop his wife from leaving? Doesn't he realize how unnatural this is? This man envisions a future where he pushes me out and controls Mary alongside Rosalie. Well then, goodbye. I'll leave while Mary is still asleep. I headed to the hotel I had already booked. I planned to stay there for a few days and make preparations. Finally able to move freely, I kept in touch with the investigation company. I also reached out to people in the music industry. It was necessary to confirm the extent of Rosalie's influence and uncover how she was affecting Mary. Additionally, based on information from the investigation company, I consulted with a psychiatrist to deepen my understanding of Rosalie's condition. Directly asking wouldn't yield any answers about a patient's state, so I presented myself as someone who had lost a child. And here's what I discovered. Sometimes, I start to feel like other people's children are my own. Does this happen often? Yes, some people do experience those feelings. They may see a child who looks similar and think of them as a reincarnation. Reincarnation. What happens when those feelings intensify? Do people ever harm other children? I don't want to do something like that. Please, stay calm. While it's not unheard of for someone to fixate on another child, the fact that you've come to consult us is a positive step. The doctor's comforting words barely registered with me. The investigation's findings were true. Rosalie believed Mary to be the reincarnation of her deceased daughter and was fixated on her. I was convinced my decisions and actions were correct. I could not let Mary be sacrificed to them any longer. As her mom, I had a duty to protect her. A few days later, I returned to the house alone. Stepping into the dimly lit hallway, I heard voices coming from down the corridor. It was Mark and Rosalie. My heart raced. Carefully suppressing my presence, I followed the voices. The living room door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, I could see the two of them. Mark was spreading out documents on the table, pointing at something and explaining. Rosalie was seated on the couch, nodding and smiling. "This is the living room, and you can see the park from the window. I think Mary will love it. How wonderful! Finally, we can be a real family. Yes, from now on, the three of us." The moment I heard those words, I flung the door open, driven by a surge of emotions. "What are you doing?" My sudden appearance made them freeze for a moment. Rosalie stared at me in shock. Mark, on the other hand, glanced at Rosalie, then quickly masked his unease with a strained frown. "Yulia, did you forget something? You could have called, and I would have sent it to you. You've already left, so this house isn't yours anymore." Mark's attempt to justify bringing another woman into the house was clear, but I was prepared for such behavior. I looked at Mark and Rosalie coldly. More importantly, where's Mary? She hasn't come home yet. Don't tell me you had a change of heart and took her away. Mary isn't coming back here. I've already told her everything. At that moment, Mark fell silent. His wandering, unstable gaze seemed to search for the truth in my words. His lips quivered. His face gradually lost all color. Mark, trying to mask his visible agitation, scoffed. "What are you talking about? Everything? What do you even mean? You must have gone crazy from loneliness after choosing to leave on your own. The ones who've truly lost it are you and Rosalie. Rosalie, startled by the sudden mention of her name, flinched in surprise. I continued speaking before she could respond. You're both obsessed with this delusion that Mary is the reincarnation of your deceased child, and you've schemed to make her yours. Who's really crazy here? Mary knows about all of this, but I wonder who she would think is out of their mind, me or you two. As I spoke, Rosalie's expression shifted dramatically. Her initial look of shock morphed into anger, and then finally, a defiant smirk twisted her lips. With a mocking grin, she said, "So she already knows. That makes things easier. Where is Mary? There's no way I'd tell you. You'll never see her again." Rosalie's face darkened in an instant. The calm, public persona she usually wore was gone, replaced by a raw, blatant hatred. Enough of this nonsense. Mary belongs to us. Rosalie stood up, advancing toward me, but I didn't flinch. If I backed down now, I couldn't protect Mary. Mary isn't your daughter. I won't let you use her for your twisted fantasies anymore. At my outburst, Rosalie grabbed my arm. Mark stood up as well, and the two of them closed in on me. "Shut up. Mary is her reincarnation. You wouldn't understand. Mary is Mary. She's your daughter, isn't she? What have you been looking at over the last 15 years? What do you even know?" Mark's hysterical yelling echoed through the house. Rosalie joined in, attacking me verbally. "Yulia, it's because you're so incompetent that we had to step in. Mary needs us." I struggled desperately to break free from them, but their strength overpowered me. Even so, the thought of protecting Mary kept me moving. Mary isn't your property. I'm her mom, and I will protect her no matter what." Just then, I heard a noise near the front door. A voice followed as the door opened. "This is the police. We received a report." The two froze in surprise. Apparently, one of the neighbors had called the police after hearing Mark shouting. As the officers entered the living room, Rosalie quickly let go of my arm, but Mark continued to glare at me. "Everyone, please calm down. What is going on here?" I tried to steady my breathing as I prepared to explain what had happened, but before I could, Rosalie quickly began making excuses. "We were just talking about family matters." And then this person started causing a scene. Her incoherent words clearly painted me as the one at fault in the eyes of the officer. Mark frantically tried to calm Rosalie down, but she refused to stop. The officer, unaffected by their exchange, scanned the situation with a composed demeanor. Then his eyes landed on my injured arm, and he shot a sharp look at Mark. "You raised your hand against her, didn't you?" "No, that's not it. This is a misunderstanding." The officer looked at me as if seeking confirmation of Mark's claim. I shook my head desperately, silently pleading for help. "Let's take a moment to discuss this calmly." With that, the officer escorted the two of them outside. The officer asked if I wanted to go to the hospital, but I declined, saying it wasn't necessary. He explained that they would need to question me further later, but would wait until I was ready. He left his contact information, urging me to reach out when I felt up to it, then left. Once the house fell silent again, I collapsed to my knees on the living room floor. My entire body trembled, but one thing was crystal clear to me. This was the first step toward protecting Mary. Several months have passed since that day. As Mark and Rosalie's wrongdoings came to light, our lives changed dramatically. Rosalie faced scandal after scandal as her manipulative tactics in the music industry, including judging interference and secret dealings, were exposed. The bashing towards a once prominent producer and familiar face in the media was huge. She could no longer maintain her position in the industry. Their names frequently appeared in headlines and news reports, and every time I saw them, I felt a tangle of emotions. After questioning by the police, Rosalie spiraled into a state of mental collapse and is now reportedly in a recovery facility. Whether she will ever fully confront her misdeeds is unclear, but that is no longer my concern. Mark, too, has lost everything he had built as a musician. His credibility within the industry is destroyed. His university position is gone, and he is now burdened with alimony payments following our divorce proceedings. I formally filed for divorce, and he accepted without any resistance. I'm sorry, I was wrong about everything. His voice was weaker than I had ever heard, laced with resignation. I couldn't tell whether he felt genuine remorse or guilt for his actions toward me. Perhaps the only thing he regretted losing was Mary, but regardless of his feelings, I had no intention of forgiving him. There was no reason to keep him in my life anymore. Protecting my new life with Mary. Nothing is more important than that. And in the future of our family, Mark has no place. When Mary found out what her dad had done with his mistress, she was deeply shocked. I'm standing on a foundation of lies. Even winning that competition wasn't because of my talent. No, Mary. Your music is genuine. I promise you. No one can deny the hard work you've put in. Even so, for a while, she refused to play the piano. The practice room she locked herself in was filled not with vibrant music, but with a cold, lonely silence. When I quietly peeked inside, I saw her small figure sitting motionless at the piano. It was no surprise she wanted to step away from music after everything that had happened. Even if she chose to leave music, it was her life to decide. I was determined to respect whatever path Mary chose, and to support her in any way I could. But even during such a time, those who loved her music stayed by her side. One day, a renowned musician and Mary's mentor visited her. You have an extraordinary gift. No matter what anyone says, that remains an unshakable truth. Playing music that brings joy to others is something you can take pride in. Mary was moved to tears by those words and slowly began to approach the piano again. Her music became more delicate yet more powerful than ever before. The way she worked to reclaim her unique sound was nothing short of beautiful. Then came Mary's birthday. We held a small concert, just the two of us. The audience consisted of close friends and the mentors who had supported her. Yet, the space was filled with warm music and love. Mom, let's play together today. Her suggestion overwhelmed me with emotion. As we sat side by side on stage and played our first duet, I felt her music resonate directly with my heart. That feeling was indescribably profound. After the performance, Mary looked at the audience with a shy smile. Being able to continue my music is thanks to all of you who support me. I will cherish my music from now on. Seeing her like that, I was confident her future would be bright. She would walk her own life, one where no one could hurt her again. We have continued to hold a concert every year on her birthday. Mary has grown into an independent musician, and I have found a new path as both her mom and an individual. The joy of music lies in sharing it with someone, and I am deeply grateful for the days when Mary and I can rediscover that truth together.
Please don't be a nuisance to me. I mean, you rely on others too much, right? Try to handle things on your own a bit, will you? Callie spoke these thoughtless words to Bianca, who is physically challenged. Unaware of the struggles Bianca faces. I'll never forgive this. If you dare speak ill of Bianca again, be prepared. I'm Mila. 27 years old. Living with my parents. I work and could live alone. Considering my age, few of us are likely to live at home. But I stay home for a reason. That reason is my sister, Bianca. Bianca was born with nerve issues, making it hard for her to move. She needs care, especially since our father passed away. And it's too much for our mom to handle alone. It's not easy assisting someone's daily life. And mom isn't young anymore. So, I take the lead in caring for Bianca. Are you okay, Bianca? Does your body hurt? No, I'm fine. Thank you. Bianca, despite her pain, always worries about me. She tries to do everything she can and used to apologize all the time when I started caring for her. Seeing her like that made my heart ache. Bianca, please don't apologize. But, after asking her several times, she reluctantly agreed. She feels sorry, but I don't mind at all. Mom opposed me taking care of her. Worried about my age, job, and marriage prospects. But I care more about Bianca. And want to stay by her side. Each time Mom brought it up, I'd rebel. I want to be with Bianca. Reflecting on it now, I was quite childish. Mom understood and stopped objecting. She takes care of Bianca while I'm at work. I'm grateful for her concern. But being there for Bianca means the most to me. After Bianca sleeps, Mom and I share our day's events. Mom seems happy. It reminds me that we rarely had these talks during my teenage years, and I wonder if she enjoys our conversations. Then, one day, while caring for Bianca, she mentioned something. Callie's birthday is coming up soon. Ah, Callie. I was confused. Callie is my younger sister. I'm the middle of 3 sisters. After graduating high school, Callie left home and never returned. She doesn't answer calls or emails. And it's unclear if she even reads them. Callie always disliked Bianca for her disability. Bianca, you're gross. Stay away from me, she would say, causing trouble for Mom and Bianca. As a child, she found Bianca's differences suspicious. When Mom scolded her, "Hey, you can't say that," Callie would behave for a while but soon start harassing Bianca again. Hiding her pencil case, using foul language. Mom and I were exasperated with Callie. As she grew into a teenager, her attitude towards Bianca worsened. She started staying out late. And it wasn't unusual for her not to come home. No matter how much we cautioned her. "Shut up! Don't interfere!" She'd yell and storm out. Eventually, Mom gave up. Just let her be. And on the day Callie left home after high school, she said this to Bianca. "Please, don't trouble me. I mean, you're too dependent on others, right? Try to do something on your own for a change." Callie, oblivious to Bianca's situation, uttered these words. Bianca, despite her limitations, strived to be independent. She browsed job listings with her immobile body, determined to work. Ultimately, she couldn't find employment and remained home, but she never stopped trying to increase what she could do by herself. I couldn't forgive Callie for her heartless remarks. "Really, Callie?" As I was about to lash out, Bianca stopped me. "Maybe that's how Callie sees it. Sorry for being such a burden," she said. Looking at Callie, her face a mix of irritation and smugness, she left home. And we lost touch. I heard from relatives that Callie got married right after high school, likely spending time at her boyfriend's place even when she was away from our home. Initially, I tried reaching out. But she never responded. So, I tried to live without thinking about Callie. Bianca, are you going to contact Callie again this year? Yeah, I think I'll try. Despite the hurtful words, Bianca still sent birthday messages to Callie, knowing she wouldn't reply. Bianca said she wanted to at least wish Callie a happy birthday, since she couldn't do much for her. I'd tell her she's kind, but she always denied it. Just normal, she'd say, shyly smiling. Months later, Mom and I looked down at Bianca. She lay peacefully in her hospital bed. Her condition worsened after Callie's birthday, and she passed away. It was heartbreaking to see Bianca, who could no longer speak, and I cried daily. There was no reply from Callie. Even when I informed her of Bianca's death, there was no response. Though Callie resented Bianca, she was still family. I hoped for even a single word, but it seemed I expected too much. I sent the funeral details, but Callie didn't reply or attend. Mom, either resigned or forgetful, never mentioned Callie again. After the funeral, Mom and I cleared out Bianca's room. In the closet, I found an album I never knew Bianca had. It contained photos of Bianca, Mom, and me on outings, and pictures from my childhood. Did Mom know about these photos? When asked, she revealed Bianca had secretly collected photos of me, finding strength in my smile. Hearing this, I burst into tears, sobbing like a child, comforted by Mom. Then, I felt something warm on my head. Looking up, I saw Mom crying too, holding my hand. Bianca was that loved. A year has passed since Bianca's departure. Since then, my heart has felt empty, filled with a sense of loss. My days are spent in a job I don't enjoy. While Mom and I remain close, it's not enough to fill the void Bianca left. I wonder what will become of me. I realized I was thinking about such things. But then, one day, I got a call on my mobile phone from an unknown number. Who could it be? After a few rings, I answered, and the person on the other end was unexpected. Hello, this is Sterling, Callie's husband. Excuse me? You're Callie's husband? That was Callie's husband. Sterling, my brother-in-law. The mystery deepened. What could Sterling possibly want with me? In response to my question, "Yes," he said. His tone sounded somewhat angry. Do you need something?" As I waited for his next words, Sterling said something even more surprising. "Please pick up your sister with disabilities. We've been looking after her for 6 months now." An impossible situation had arisen. Bianca was with Sterling. I was so taken aback, I fell silent. Thinking I was upset, Sterling pressed on. "Why are you silent? Don't you care about your sister? What kind of human are you?" They have been even more driven. His words bewildered me, but I spoke about Bianca. Bianca passed away a year ago. But Sterling, perhaps in his excitement, wasn't listening. "Tired of caring and just dumping her on someone else? Your sister looked so sad, like she's been abandoned." This conversation was going nowhere. I interrupted Sterling to repeat about Bianca. "Bianca died a year ago." After a brief silence, Sterling spoke. "Is that true?" It seemed my words finally reached him. I calmly explained to a now composed Sterling that Bianca had died a year ago, and that it was Callie, not me, who had disliked Bianca. I also mentioned that we had informed Callie when Bianca passed away. Shocked, Sterling seemed at a loss for words. Then, with a trembling voice, he said, "Then who is the woman in our house?" "Excuse me?" I listened to Sterling's story. Apparently, 6 months ago, Callie brought home a woman in a wheelchair, claiming she was her sister. Initially, they tried contacting us repeatedly, but Nobody will listen, it's pointless," Callie had said, refusing to acknowledge us. Despite claiming the woman was Bianca, Callie didn't care for her at all. After returning from work, all the care fell on Sterling. Despite hearing the entire story, I couldn't grasp the situation. And it seemed Sterling himself felt the same. "Would you mind coming to our house? Maybe it's better to talk in person." Indeed, meeting and talking in person would be quicker than over the phone. I agreed to Sterling's suggestion and decided to visit his apartment with Mom next weekend. When I told Mom about the call from Sterling and the story about Bianca, she was very surprised. She was also quite scared that Bianca, who was supposed to be gone, might be there. Finally, the day arrived. Bracing ourselves, we left the house and headed to Sterling's apartment, nervous. "Is this the place?" I muttered, and Mom beside me nodded. She seemed quite tense as well. We approached the designated room and rang the bell. Then, from inside the room, we heard 2 sets of footsteps stop abruptly. The door opened, and a fresh-faced young man appeared. "Mother-in-law, sister-in-law, thank you for coming all this way." Saying so, Sterling led us inside. We followed his lead and were about to enter the room. But we were interrupted by a certain person, making it difficult to enter smoothly. "Hey, why are you here? I didn't call you, and you haven't even met Sterling, right? Just do as I say and leave quickly." Yet, Callie, claiming to be the sister, didn't care for the woman at all. She physically blocked us, creating a wall to prevent us from entering the living room, but we managed to get past it. Turning to Sterling's side, I saw a woman sitting in a wheelchair. Her eyes filled with fear, unsure of how to react. "Is this lady your sister?" Sterling asked, pointing to her. The woman appeared to be around Bianca's age. Of course, neither Mom nor I knew her. "No, she's not. We don't know her," I responded. "I see," Sterling quietly said. He then turned back to the woman. Meanwhile, Callie was trembling and had collapsed on the floor. Ignoring Callie's state, Sterling asked the woman, "Who are you, exactly?" But the woman didn't respond. Something was going on. Maybe she was threatened by Callie into silence. I turned back to Callie. "Who is this woman? You brought her here, right?" I asked, but Callie remained silent as usual. "What? You didn't bring a stranger here, did you?" As I raised my voice in question, a soft voice came from behind. It seemed to be from the woman in the wheelchair. Looking at her again, she appeared remorseful and stayed quiet. After a deep breath, she slowly started to reveal her identity. "I am." "Don't say anything! Don't talk!" Callie desperately shouted, trying to prevent her from speaking. Hearing this, Imam was very angry. "You stay quiet!" and raised her voice. Surprised by her tone, Callie gave up on speaking. We turned back to the woman, encouraging her to continue. Slowly, despite being scared, she began to reveal the full story. "My name is Christina Redmaniel." "Redmaniel!" Sterling exclaimed loudly upon hearing her name. It was unfamiliar to us. "Sterling, do you know her?" "Do I know her? Could you be the daughter of Mr. Redmaniel?" Christina nodded. Hearing more from Sterling, it turned out that Christina was the daughter of Sterling's boss. Hearing this, both Mom and I were perplexed. Sterling, trying his best to explain, also seemed unsure of what was happening. What was Callie trying to do, bringing a complete stranger and claiming her to be Bianca? Beyond questions, I felt fear. It seemed the only way to get answers was to confront Callie directly. I stood up next to Callie, who still sat on the floor with a disgruntled expression, and demanded an explanation. What's going on? You started all this, right? Involving so many people is unthinkable. Explain everything. However, Callie just stood there, staring off into space, refusing to speak. Even when cornered like this, she seemed unwilling to reveal the truth. I knew Callie had issues, but I didn't expect her to be this stubborn. What should we do now? As I pondered, Christina spoke up. Callie is dating my brother. She said it straight, looking right at us, unlike her earlier frightened demeanor. Noticing Christina's boldness, Callie glared at her. And then, Callie tried to pounce on Christina. We managed to stop her and turned our attention back to Christina. Stammering at times, but earnestly, Christina shared her story. Callie tried to interrupt, but Mom's stern look silenced her. Christina revealed she had been living with a disability in her lower body since a childhood accident. Since then, her family had been overly cautious around her, making her feel uncomfortable. One day, after more than 10 years of this, Callie suddenly showed up. "I'll take you in," she had said. Confused, Christina eventually felt less afraid, knowing Callie was her brother's partner. Perhaps Callie took Christina in to impress her boyfriend. Once at Callie's home, Callie did nothing for Christina, leaving everything to Sterling. When alone with Callie, the kindness shown at the time of taking her in vanished. "You're in the way," Callie would say, often negating Christina's existence. The way she treated Christina was similar to how she had treated Bianca. "A nuisance. Go away. Don't be dependent." It was too cruel, considering she had taken Christina in. Hearing this, I was shaking with anger. Such a person being my sister is too shameful. "What do you mean, Callie?" I asked. Callie retorted loudly. "It's all Sterling's fault. He's always busy with work and doesn't pay attention to me. That's for the family's sake. How dare you talk so arrogantly when you don't even work?" Sterling was clearly angry, hearing such childish excuses. "If you are not working, it would be nice to have Sterling go to work for you." Watching Callie continue with her excuses, I was overwhelmed with anger like never before. Just as I was about to unleash my anger on Callie, Sterling spoke up. "Do you realize how many people you're hurting, Callie? Your sister, mother, Christina, your late sister. As a human being, you're out of line." Callie stopped making excuses and was visibly shocked. Callie, usually faced with a calm Sterling. She tried to retort, but ultimately, she couldn't find the words against Sterling's anger. Sterling continued to explain how serious the situation was. "But, I mean, Callie tried to make more excuses, but tears prevented her from speaking clearly. Seeing Callie acting like a victim infuriated me, and I spoke up again. "Do you know how much Bianca worried about you, Callie?" Callie turned towards me, tears in her eyes. "I don't know any sister. I don't have a sister." Her words left me in shock. I never expected her to say something like that. I was at a loss for words, but before I knew it, this is what came out of my mouth. "Do you know, Callie, that Bianca sent you an email every year on your birthday, despite the terrible things you said to her? She always thought of you." Then Callie hung her head down again. She must have known about the birthday emails, but chose to ignore them. I couldn't help but blurt out. "Despicable," I said. Callie didn't expect such words from me. She remained silent, tears quietly streaming down her face. Afterward, Sterling and Callie got divorced. Sterling seemed very angry with his brother for neglecting Christina and discussed with his boss the affair and the treatment of Christina. Soon, rumors about the brother, some perhaps unfounded, began to spread in the company. He tried to endure at first, but eventually resigned. Callie, after the divorce, moved in with Christina's brother, but with him leaving his job, they had no source of income. They moved from their previous residence to a cheaper apartment and somehow managed to get by. After the divorce, Callie came to me, begging, "Let me live at our parents' house." Of course, I refused. Mom and I somehow managed to send her back. This time, unlike before, Callie sent many messages, but I ignored all of them. Eventually, the messages stopped. However, what really bothered me was why Christina stayed in that house without any resistance. Christina and I became friends after that incident. Out of curiosity, I asked her why she didn't try to escape, and her answer was surprising. It turned out that Christina had fallen in love with Sterling, who cared for her without expecting anything in return. She knew she would never be with him if she stayed. But going back home wasn't an option either, as she wouldn't be treated well there. Callie's words were hurtful, but being near Sterling made her happy. Now, amazingly, she and Sterling are married. "What? Married?" I exclaimed in surprise. I had not expected such a turn of events. Sterling, too, must have been drawn to Christina while caring for her. Now they live together in that apartment. Upon closer inspection, a ring shone on her left ring finger. Despite everything, had this incident not happened, Christina and I wouldn't have become close friends, nor would she have married Sterling. It was a complex process, but if everyone is happy now, that's what matters. I too need to find a marriage partner soon. With that thought, I sipped my coffee.